Hey everyone, this is Mike, and welcome to the Weekly Spoon Podcast, where we talk about the news and we just have fun talking to our guest. And this week's guest is Scott Heimendinger, who is a fellow Seattleite, longtime cooking inventor. And so we talk a little bit about his background and we talk about some of the news of the week. So I hope you enjoy this. And let's get to it. All right. Hey, we're here with the all Seattle crew today, guys. We have Carlos Rodella sitting, I think, actually you're in Kirkland right now, right?
Yeah, east side, but basically Seattle.
Scott, are you in Belltown?
We'll call it downtown, near the market.
I like Scott's when I said, when Carlos goes, it's basically Seattle. He goes, yeah, right.
It's kind of far, especially if there's traffic, yeah.
For those of you who aren't Seattle insiders, we kind of mock the east side, and I think they kind of mock us.
Oh, there's no mocking. Really?
No, not really.
The whole Burgermaster versus Dick's thing, isn't Burgermaster like the east side, kind of like local burger joint?
I mean, there's one over here. Isn't there? I thought there was one in Aurora as well.
I think it's the one with the drive-thru, right?
I just wish our local burger chains had less sexually aggressive names, if we're going to put them head to head.
Dick's is a great place, though.
Yeah,
Dick's is underrated. But we're not here to talk burgers. We're here to talk food tech, and I guess you can put that in the same category. But
it's
Scott Heimendinger, welcome to the show. For those who don't know you, I think a lot of people know you as the Seattle Food Geek. But tell people about yourself.
Thanks for having me first. I am a culinary inventor, so I try to develop new technologies for home cooks in particular. I started a sous vide company called Sancerre way back. I worked for Modernist Cuisine for a while. More recently, I helped out Anova. And for the last couple of years, I've been working on my own invention, which is still, sadly, super secret instead of gracing retail shelves. But yeah.
Yeah, if I were to do like a digital background of me working in a workshop of creating stuff, I'd have your background. I think, is that a big red toolbox behind you?
Big red toolbox and drill press, and we're just going to pretend like I'm not actually in the guest bedroom of our downtown apartment where you're not supposed to do like grinding metal during business hours.
Yeah, I'm sure your wife loves the toolbox in the guest room.
It's functional and stylish.
But we're going to start on some friendly territory for you, Scott, because you, as you said, you worked for Nova, helping them with their steam oven. And that's an area that I've loved to talk about because, quite honestly, I think we need more steam ovens in our kitchens. And so this story this week that Tovala debuted their newest appliance. It's the third appliance ever, but it's the first one without steam. They announced essentially a 5-in-1 air fryer. And for those of you who don't know Tovala, they're this hybrid startup where they essentially send you a steam oven or now an air fryer, and they also do food delivery to try to make things really simple. They're really one of the only companies that have successfully pulled off this combination of hardware and food delivery. And they were we've been following them since the early beginning. They actually pitched their company at one of the early Smart Kitchen Summits, so I'm always happy to follow them. But I'm curious to get your feedback on this move into doing an air fryer and not having steam built in.
Yeah. So I think the first thing I'll say is air frying is good marketing, right? Like air fryers have as much in common with fryers as air mattresses have with actual mattresses, right? Like you can use both of them for sleeping. And if you don't have room in your kitchen for a spring coil memory foam mattress, then by all means fry in your oven. So like point number one is just to recognize that there is some hype in marketing. That said, like probably like you and probably like most Americans outside of the Deep South, like I don't take out the deep fryer very often, but I still like crispy food. And so the scenario of air frying in an oven format it makes a lot of sense. And their move here to exclude steam from this generation of SKU, I think is pretty understandable, especially kind of from a science or engineering perspective. So to make food crispy, you need a couple of things. You need intense heat in a combination of convection and radiation. you need to move a lot of air around, because without moving air, you'll get this sort of boundary layer where you've got evaporated water just hanging out on the surface of the food. That can't make it crispy. And then you also need to vent off all of that steam, all of the water that you've driven off of that food. So you need to allow a lot of moist air to escape the oven. It is possible to do those things in an oven that is also a steam oven, but it makes the whole hardware way more expensive, because steam ovens like to naturally keep all the moisture in. Air fryers like to naturally have that all vent, and a venting system that can do both well is expensive. So I think this makes sense. Air frying has been a major scenario for home cooks. Crispy food is delicious, and we're not all going to break out the deep fryer.
I think that's the same exact answer, all that detail that Carlos, you would have given, right?
Exactly. I would have given the detail about the water evaporating and all that stuff. No, but I think that at the end of the day, too, it's pretty cheap. I looked at it, right? It's like $100 or $150. So that's going to be huge for a consumer as well, right?
Yeah. I think the way they work is, you sign up for a few of the meals, and there's essentially a subsidy going on where they basically make the hardware cheap, kind of the typical subsidization model. My only thing with this is so much of their food that they deliver to your home it is oftentimes almost requires steam. And that's one of the features that consumers of their service love. And so I was checking out their Facebook group. There's actually a fairly big Facebook community that is Tavala, not managed by Tavala. It's not a corporate page. And a lot of them were just talking about this, not kind of confused about, is this a new device? Does it do steam? And so I think their big problem is just educating the consumer now with two SKUs. I think it immensely complicates their lives a little bit.
And it, as an engineer or as somebody who stared down a bill of materials and had to make the hard cuts, I understand why they chose what they did. But it's also a little bit of a missed opportunity, because some of the best stuff comes from a combination of high heat, superheated steam, and then a sort of a dry cooking stage. So, for example, in the Anova oven, throwing potatoes in there and going at very high temperature with added steam gets this fudgy interior, and then you vent the door, you turn the steam off or whatever, and you kind of crisp on the outside. It could be done even better with even better venting, and maybe that's what Tavala chose to optimize for. But I'm with you. Steam, for the rest of the things you're trying to make that aren't French fries and tater tots and chicken nuggets, gets you faster cooking because it delivers the heat to the food more efficiently, and all the other benefits. So it's a shame that they had to make the trade-off. On the other hand, they've got a $99 with subsidy, good-looking countertop air fryer.
Yeah, and you can still get the Pro for $149. Sorry to interrupt you, Carlos. And that $149 for a steam oven, that's the cheapest steam oven you're going to get out there. It's a pretty good one.
Yeah, it's a good price, but like you were saying, you just listed some of the things that you would use that air fryer for. It's like looking at what people are actually using it for. They don't have much time. They want to really quickly put an English muffin, a pizza, or whatever. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, they must have looked at their consumers as well, right? So.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I mean, hell, our Valentine's Day meal at home this year was a sheet pan of tater tots, air fried, if you will, in the Anova oven, but then with 11-day pastrami and sodium citrate cheese sauce. I think that was probably the most popular Valentine's Day meal that people were having this year.
Easily.
It was everywhere.
Next story up is there seems to be a rush on at least a couple companies building sourdough assistant technology. One just came out this week. I don't know if you know Fred Benenson, Scott. He's a creator out there, does food technology as well, and he launched his breadwinner. Essentially, it's a starter assistant. You put it on your sourdough starter, and it tells you when it's peak time to create it. And there's another one that just debuted about a week ago before that. So I know that we had the pandemic rush. Everyone became sourdough bakers. What do you think about this technology?
I like it. I checked out their crowdfunding page, and I really loved their campaign video, right? It had this sort of quirky tone and all that kind of stuff. right up until the point in the video where they went, so how does it work? You don't need to worry about that. Let's move on. And like, please stop doing that. I realize that like not every audience out there wants to see the like exploded view diagram of your technology to understand what's going on. But the people who care enough about their sourdough to spend $150 on an IoT device might. So please, please, please show us what's going on. The thing I like about what Breadwinner is offering, at least from what they put out in their marketing, is this notion that it does one thing simply and perhaps well. It measures how much your starter has grown over time and keeps track of the temperature that it's experienced, and will show you when it's reached peak volume and when it's past that peak volume, and presumably you can use that information to be a better bread baker at home. I love that. It's not trying to be everything. I did not see any mention of a subscription pricing model. Like, it's just a thing that does a thing that people might need. And I really, really, like, that resonates with me quite a bit.
Yeah, and what Fred's done is not only create a hardware, which he's worked on for some time, he also has built a community. So he has an entire website. I think it's at trybreadwinner.com. We can always put that in the show notes. That is all about baking. So I like the pairing of a community with hardware. It reminds me a little bit of the old Chef Steps approach, where they basically built a massive community around sous vide, then came out with their sous vide appliance and really became pretty successful before they ran into certain other problems. Yeah. But I like that combination of community and hardware.
I'm with you. The thing that scares me when I saw how much they had invested in their community site and doing this sort of bread baker's percentage scaling calculator and all this kind of stuff is that stuff stays expensive over time. You have to maintain it. People expect improvements, all this kind of stuff. And those expenses don't necessarily keep pace with the income you make from just selling one-time hardware, and it leads you down all of these sort of devil on the shoulder looking paths of tacking, well, how do we increase our consumer lifetime recurring revenue numbers and blah, blah, blah. And then you end up in sort of where Chef Steps did, which is like, oh no, we can't, like we have got to charge fees for the better stuff. You can tell I've got a little bit of an axe to grind with those business models. I think what they've put up there is really, really cool. I would hope that they're set up in such a way that they never have to cripple their hardware in order to support that other side of the business.
Yeah, I always think of like when we talk about a lot of businesses on this podcast of Shark Tank, and like what they would say when it comes to like, oh yeah, so let's look at your market size. That's pretty small. It's a pretty niche market. And so, like you said, like what do you have to do to continue getting revenue from them? Because if you sell a one-time thing to a niche market, is that sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, I was watching the crowdfunding page. I think they hit half of their target by today. Like they've sold maybe 200 of these things, or about 20,000. Their target was 35,000. They have a lot of runway, another 40 days. Maybe they'll hit 100,000, 200,000. But as you guys know, when you're building hardware, all that money is going to go into tooling and getting that thing out to market. And who knows how much he'll have after that, because hopefully the idea is he can make a business out of this. But it is a fairly narrow market. How many people want hardware for being really good sourdough bakers?
I think we've certainly passed the peak of sourdough in terms of the Google Insights graph or whatever, when everybody lost their mind in the pandemic. But I do still believe that if you tried making sourdough or any kind of bread making during, if the pandemic was the catalyst that caused you to like get your hands in some dough for the first time, that experience might stick with you. And yeah, you're not going to do your, bake artisan bread in 5 minutes a day, every day kind of routine, but you earned your bread baker badge, and you might come back and use that badge again over time. And if you do, like, for example, the last time I baked a sourdough loaf was, I don't know, a year ago or something like that. But we still have a starter in the fridge that my wife maintains, because I'm not allowed to touch any living thing. Plants and dough starters are off limits for me. Nice. Those are her hands only.
That's impressive. You've kept one alive for for like a year.
She's kept one
I always
alive
kill-
for
I always
years.
kill my stars. Okay.
Yeah. And it's gotten, it's looked like it's on its deathbed, but these things are surprisingly resilient.
One of the things I liked about the video that you mentioned from Breadwinner was the names of the bread starters. I don't know if you saw those. I think one was Bread Astaire.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome.
These niche communities around food makers, like I think the beer brewing community and others, there are companies that have made successful attempts to do hardware. Sous Vide's another example. It's narrow, but if you get in good with the community and they know about you, I think you can make a business of it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the risk is that you have some pressure to grow into the everything to do with bread business instead of servicing the customers that want those niche things and will pay good money for something that improves the thing that they're super into, whether it's beer making or carbonating your own beverages or whatever. If you're super into that thing, then the sticker price for the device they're selling is not that high compared to, the anguish of time and effort wasted on a bad loaf.
All right, next story, we're going to talk a little bit about our event we had on Wednesday where we did a mini summit and welcomed people in the restaurant tech space and in the AI software space to talk about what this whole rollout of generative AI could mean for the world of food. And I don't know, Scott, you were in the audience. I think you attended a lot of the sessions. What was your general impression walking away from that?
My general impression was that all of us are getting exposed to these new tools at about the same time. And that the companies who have AI and ML and whatever sort of in their taglines or above the fold on their websites are also getting their sea legs with these consumer tools that are changing the world at about the same speed that we are. I sort of expected that we would have seen, I don't know, this is going to sound awful, but that we would have seen a portrait of the future or sort of thought leadership coming from those companies. Instead, what I observed at least was a little bit more of the same like awe and sense of possibility that everybody sees when you generate an image with DALL-E for the first time, or when you talk to ChatGPT and it writes you a love sonnet or a cocktail recipe, which can be the same thing.
Yeah. I think the most sober perspective was from the food scientist who's basically using machine learning in his tool to create novel proteins. And he's like, we're not going to put something like ChatGPT or generative AI on creative new proteins, because what we don't want to do is create something that the world's never seen before, because that could be very, very dangerous. You don't want to create a new protein that isn't in nature. I think where we're seeing it adopted quickly is, not surprisingly, by the restaurant tech guys that are doing digital platforms. And so, Lunchbox is using DALL-E to create image generation. I thought that's a great application. Hey, if you're a small operator and want to do some Instagram marketing and you want to create a wolf eating a hamburger and you can't hire a designer, plug those words into DALL-E. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm a little concerned by that scenario. Like, replace food service operator with dating profile. Like, I don't have good pictures of me, so I'm just going to use DALL-E to generate some glamour shots of like my abs and, jawline and chiseled cheekbones, right? Like, want to make sure that there's, especially nowadays when like I order something from a restaurant that may or may not actually be a kitchen inhabited by ghosts, where the name of the chef may or may not actually correspond to who is on premise. And now I'm doing it from a picture menu that was hallucinated by a robot. That's a lot of chains of separation that make me a little worried.
Well, Carlos, you're the only one I think is still on the market. Are you using DALL-E to create your image profile for some dating apps?
No, but when I heard that, people do that. Like, it's not DALL-E, but there's a million, apps that will change your face into how you want to be represented. At the end of the day, you're still going to have to meet people in person, so it won't matter. But I think, I've been using ChatGPT since it came out. I've been using OpenAI. I'm on a ton of other things. I just got access to the Bing, which is broken right now, the Bing chat version. But I've been using all that stuff for a very long time. I'm an early adopter. I love what the potential is of it. I was just having this conversation last night where like this version of AI that's happening is similar to smartphones and the early internet. And so, like you said earlier, like at this conference you guys went to, like, yeah, people are going to be in shock and awe and kind of like, whoa, all these possibilities, but it's going to be ubiquitous. Like, we can't be like, oh, I don't know if I believe in this thing. That's like saying, I don't know if I believe in smartphones. So I think that as long as you just get on board and use it, again, respectfully and understand how to best use it for your company, it's just going to be really important that you jump on board now. That's all I have to say to people.
Yeah. I was listening to an interview on a podcast last night with Sam Altman, who I think is the guy who created OpenAI. And the host asked, can you promise us, I think it was How I Built This Guy, whoever his name is. Anyway, he goes, this conversation reminds me a lot of my conversation in 2010 with Mark Zuckerberg, when he was all hopeful about the future of social media and how in 10 years, everything would be great and we present our best selves. And we saw how that turned out. Can you promise us that the bad actors won't get a hold of AI and turn it towards doing bad in the world? And he cannot make that promise. So, I mean, I think it's going to be really hard to control. And that's a topic for another podcast. In another conversation I had, someone was talking about how, like, last year at this time, all the conversation was about the metaverse, speaking of Mark Zuckerberg. And now it seems like AI has displaced that. I kind of started to think about how AI may ultimately be the engine that drives really interesting metaverse scenarios. My son is super interested in AI generated gaming. And I think there's already some games that are already being generated by AI.
Oh, yeah, it's already happening. Yes.
But I think that's going to be really interesting. Just these AI generated universes.
Can I talk to that really quickly? Because there's this incredible program, and we can tell our audience, it's called Opus. It's not out yet, but look it up and just watch the demo. And it's using just text that creates Unreal 4 graphics. Done. Just text. So you're like, forest, after the snow falls, starts adding snow as a skin map. Like, it's just done. So, like, that is definitely the future. And again, like I said earlier, it can be used as tools, right? It'll just be part of, like, the Unreal 4 tool set. It doesn't have to displace all developers, just like all these other jobs don't have to be displaced fully. We have to understand command prompts. We have to understand how to utilize it, just like a new basic programming or something, right? Or C++ or something. So I think it's going to be incredible. It's already happening with games. And I think that, yeah, alongside food, there's a lot of really cool possibilities.
I'm not much of a gamer, but like this convergence of games and AI, it seems inevitable. I actually suspect that in a few years' time, the most coveted or sort of highest paying job in the game development industry is going to be psychologist or like FBI profiler. So instead of writing full storylines and coding, the look and behavior of characters, you write their like backstory like an FBI profiler,
Right.
and the AI takes it from there and goes, hey, based on the fact that, this character hid out in an ice cave to avoid the apocalypse as a 5-year-old, this is how he would respond to seeing a stranger in the street.
Right. Well, what you're describing is the creative director and the creative side of games. And not to really quick tangent is that, like, ever since I was a kid, all I wanted to do was make games. And it was like prohibitively difficult, right, in the very beginning, because I'm older than I look. Nintendo days, Atari days, you just weren't making games. But like now, yeah, there's so many different great tools out there. You add AI in, and then you start separating out that idea of like, I can't make a game. And so I think it just opens the field where more people can actually create things because they're using, these new tools.
Speaking of digitizing our worlds and taking knowledge in the real world, putting it in a computer, this next story, Scott, I don't know if you read the story about Cloud Chef that wants to basically capture a chef's knowledge in software and allow it to basically play it back to create high quality cuisine anywhere. They're essentially calling it a Spotify for food. The way it works is they have created essentially a kitchen where they have cameras and sensors, and they put a master chef in there, someone who's good at the craft of making food, have them make their signature meals, and they record everything. And according to them, they can capture this and allow someone in a remote area of the world using this technology to essentially play it back and create the chef's creation using their technology. I wanted to know what you think about the possibilities of that.
Yeah. I think this is mostly nonsense.
Tell us how you
I
really
I know. Look, I never want to crap on somebody who is trying to make their vision happen in the food world. It takes guts and hats off to them. However, this particular vision, as stated, like a lot of people have died on this hill, and I don't know that the hill is conquerable. So like, okay, they want to take good cooking and reduce it down to a set of codified instructions. So like, first question is, how possible is that? Who does that today, and how good are they at that today? And like, you know who does that really well? McDonald's, Domino's, and Starbucks, right? They have a limited set of things. They have codified exactly how to make those things, and that's about the level of quality you can expect to come out when you replicate that, all over the world. But then there's this playback step too that they're promising, that with the technology assistance in their kitchens or some tech overlay, that they can play back that recipe. So like, okay, walk with me here. We have had sheet music for about 1,000 years, right? 1,000 years ago, somebody realized, hey, here's how I can codify sheet music. And today, a computer can listen to a virtuoso playing a violin, or let's even make the problem easier, playing a piano. And that computer can codify what that person just did into sheet music that contains all the information for playback. Now hand that sheet music to a non-virtuoso, and what do you expect to get back out? Do you expect it to get the original fidelity back out? No, of course not. Now, it's one thing if I am at home and I'm the one at the piano, or I'm the one cooking in the kitchen, I'm the chef, I'm doing the playback myself, and you have captured really critical details for a recipe, you've automated some of my cooking process. I believe in guided cooking, I believe in multi-stage cooking with automatic transitions, I believe in all of that layer. But it's another thing, and this is what they seem to be promising, is that they're taking a recipe from some virtuosic chef and they are recreating that in that chef's absence. So if I'm expecting that I've just ordered a meal from Guy Fieri and I get one from like Greg Fiorini instead, like I'm going to be disappointed.
Nice. Yeah.
Anyway, that's I don't know. I think
no, it makes sense. I want to add to it because when you mention Starbucks, my ears perk up because I make all these comedy sketches about Starbucks. I go there every day. And when you say about codifying this, recipe, newsflash, each Starbucks is different. Like even that, which is like a few things you're supposed to do. I love my baristas, and if it's the ones that I know, they're going to kill it, right? They're going to make my mocha exactly how I want it with the 2 pumps peppermint, blah, blah, blah. But if it's another location, if it's a different barista, just, their first day or whatever, it's going to be different. And so if you're talking about that being different, and McDonald's, forget about it, all right? It's like just a hamburger and there's a ketchup on it and it looks totally different and it's cold. So, yeah, I think this is difficult. That's my long-winded way to say it's difficult.
You're right in that they're discounting the virtuoso nature of a highly talented chef and all that magic in the knowledge. I think that's probably the thing they're discounting the most is like you're putting in the hands of like a $20 an hour worker, and you think he's going to make the same meal that Guy Fieri is just not going to do it.
And this is not to say so I don't believe that there is some special transcendental soul element that sits on top of our natural laws, and that's the reason that food tastes better or worse depending on who's cooking it, right? I don't believe in that. But I do believe that some sets of automation or tracking metrics about certain things, like for example, stick a thermometer probe in your meat to understand how done it is relative to I believe in all of that. I think that the fatal flaw here is trying to own all of it, right? Trying to take the whole kitchen and we're going to codify it, we're going to do playback, and we're going to do whatever. It's just too big. And there is no player that I'm aware of who I think is positioned to even come close to owning a scope that large.
Can I jump back to our other story and kind of put them together real quick? Because this is just a potential scenario. And I'm not saying it's right or will be the future, but if we think about AI again, right now AI can do this thing where I think you were saying earlier, like, AI has problems with certain stuff, but like music, it can do like a never ending like Nirvana song. And you're like, how's that sounds like Nirvana and it's not ending and it's weird, or it's just a brand new song. So like you take that and you stick it into a robot arm and it's, I don't know, maybe it's getting closer.
Could we finally have the endless breadstick that Olive Garden's been promising for all these years?
Yes. It's just one that goes on forever. That's like in my nightmares, actually. I don't like that idea.
I would take that. Endless breadsticks from Olive Garden. Yeah.
It's a lot of bread.
You could build me a robot for that. All right. Final story of the day. We're going to talk about Facebook's recent patent that was uncovered by a former coworker of mine, Janko Rutgers, of formerly of Gigome and Variety Magazine. He was digging and he found that Facebook had gotten a patent for an assistant for augmented reality glasses that would send you reminders as you're near a grocery store or near some place and tell you, hey, you need to buy milk or whatever. So geolocation's built in. Obviously, you're wearing these glasses by Ray-Ban or whatever, and you're getting these little alerts. I thought that sounds okay, but I thought we could go so much further if we're going to be using augmented reality. Why wouldn't we go and make something that, A, helps me find the milk in the grocery store, and then B, once I get to the milk place and I'm looking at all the different plant-based milks, it allows me to compare the health ingredients, etc. I just feel like, okay, alerts on my glasses would just be annoying. I get those on a phone. Let's really use augmented reality for what it'd be good for.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I also think that the release of these glasses, like they missed their window. Like peak COVID would have been the time for this, because if I went into the grocery store wearing these on my face, everybody's going to stay more than 6 feet away from me, right? Like they have that problem to begin with. But yeah, the like remind me to get milk at the store, I feel like is such a weak scenario compared to like. Here's what I want instead. Do you know Vivino, the app where you like take a picture of the front of a wine bottle and it looks it up and it gives you all the info, right? I want that in augmented reality glasses for a wine list. So when I'm sitting at a restaurant and somebody hands me a list of things that I don't recognize at all, like labels I've never heard of before, without having to be conspicuous, I can just get the little overlay of like, oh yeah, this one's 92 points, this was 94 points, this one's been marked up 450%, you sucker. Like this one's reasonably, like make me look like I'm smarter than I am. Like, isn't that supposed to be the promise of augmented reality?
Yeah, you're at a restaurant and you feel like you know what you're talking about as well,
yeah.
Right? I also think that this is another kind of future thought, but in my opinion, it's got to be contact lenses at some point. It's got to be something that's like super easy. I know glasses are pretty lightweight, but like you said, if they're made wrong, if they look weird, people aren't really going to use them. So I think that in the future, yeah, we'll have some sort of contact lenses that is Wi-Fi enabled, and it will just talk to the cloud, and it'll give us all this information in front of our face. Until then, it's just going to be a slog. And also, I would say that, Michael, what's that company that we talked about, even just last CES, that have the cameras in the fridges?
Smarter.
Yeah, Smarter and stuff like that, right? Like, that seems like more functional for right now. Like, that'll tell you what's in your fridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think no one wants to go through the world now and look like 2010 Robert Scoble. I think that's why that Facebook is working with Ray-Ban. I mean, these are Ray-Ban lenses, so I think they're probably going to look good. I don't think Ray-Ban would put out chunky, nerdy-looking glasses. I actually think where these would really be helpful is in the hands of workers. Imagine if you're a grocery store worker and you know instantly what's out of stock, you know what the price is. I think that's where it's not that far from a first responder, right? I always thought first responders made a lot of sense for augmented reality. You're a fireman, you know where the hotspots are. In a fast customer service working scenario, I think augmented reality makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Someone in chat was talking about taking photos of menus and texting them.
I got to check the chat. Thanks, Rand, for Rand Fishkin's.
Hey, Rand.
Yeah, I mean, I think augmented reality in restaurant scenarios, like for visualizing what your meal's going to look like, that would be really cool.
As long as that visualization has not been generated by an AI that like is going to make me think that my chicken parmesan has abs when I meet it in person, and it doesn't.
We're going back to abs a lot in this one. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know that.
I don't know, Scott. You're kind of fixated with the abs. Talking about, bring it all back to ChatGPT. One of the interesting things from the session we had on Wednesday was the restaurant tech guys, Matt from ClearCogs, talking about how you can actually put parameters around the information that the ChatGPT conversational layer is talking about. So you can inform it with your restaurant data. And it was interesting. We had Schubert Ho then comment. He's a restaurateur from Edmonds talking about, hey, this would be great if you could put this information on the point of sale device in the hands of my servers for wine information. So imagine a conversational layer powered by ChatGPT, but it is informed by your wine database and saying, it makes me sound really smart when I go to my table and I want to sound like I'm a professional wine virtuoso. I think that type of scenario, a combination essentially of augmented reality and conversational AI, could be really powerful.
Yeah, I like that. It's even today's version of ChatGPT, even the sort of full universe version, not the like Bayesian prior to my restaurant scenario, like picks good words. Right? Like it is, it is. Unlike
which is the perfect way to say
that.
that. That's a perfect way to say that. Yeah. It talks the right words. Good.
It is often more eloquent than like a non-professional copywriter would be. And so sometimes just to give you the words and phrases in order to express like there's value there. I saw this is not food related, but I'm in the Facebook Leavenworth, Washington members group. Leavenworth, for those who don't know, is a small fake Bavarian town that's a tourist destination about 2.5 hours outside of Seattle. And somebody asked it to like explain the challenges that tourism brings to Leavenworth. That is a Facebook group that is not known for its eloquence in posting, as I think most small town Facebook groups are. But the answer that ChatGPT gave was like better than you'd read in Sunset magazine. It was pretty incredible. So if that can help somebody tableside sell me the like appetizer sampler or the bloomin' onion, like with more flowery language, bring it on.
If you put the guide rails on the generator, I mean, ChatGPT is basically right now a good bullshit generator, right? And so if it's non-mission critical information and you can put some guide rails on it around the information it's sucking in, it might be pretty useful. Carlos?
Yeah, to jump back to that guide rails, that's a huge part of it. And to jump back to our other conversation about AI when it comes to prompting, right? Like getting good at prompting, because like you were saying, Scott, if you feed it information and certain types of information, it can not only follow that parameters, but give you a great and eloquent way to describe something you want to describe. I had it just look at my own content, like my videos and stuff, and actually like look at the comedy that I do, and I gave it scripts, because I can give it my words, and I go, hey, do this type of thing, but a little different way. Now, comedy, it's still hard for AI. It's not very funny, but it gave me structure. It gave me ideas and concepts from my concepts. So then, replicate that with other things. But
yeah. And Mike, I know you've been doing ChatGPT generated recipes or playing with that. What have you seen from there?
It made some really interesting recipes. I said, make me some, I think, banana bread with or beer bread with chocolate chips and Rice Krispies, and it made it. Well, it looked like a pretty good recipe. So I want to cook it. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
But I think for interesting recipe creation, I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's not quite IBM's Watson generator recipes, but it's interesting.
If I were a cookbook publisher, I would be a little bit worried about the future, where the world's best cookbook isn't, is whatever I ask of this model, right? It knows me, or it has the context of me, what I've enjoyed, whatever. And I can ask it for a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, and then I can say, yeah, but crispier. And then it can fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I can say whatever. And instead of being this one thing that's published from a single point of view, it's Picasso, right? It's all points of view at once, and it's happy to serve me up one. And so why,
But there's a double-edged sword to that, because I think of you find an old cookbook now and you're like, whoa, what were they doing back then? But this tastes amazing, right? So you miss those, because we have the Google homepage YouTube homepage of cooking or whatever it is, and then we're just used to getting fed what we already know we like. It's a double-edged sword. It's a real long AI cast, but I'm still excited by it because I think that there's just so much potential. And now I want to try that banana bread. Oh my goodness.
We'll try that. Maybe we'll give the recipe out in the show notes. But Scott, every time I get you on something, I try to somehow make you slip and tell us what you're working on. You're still stealthily building the next great kitchen appliance. When can we maybe learn more about what you got cooking up in the lab?
Oy, as soon as I even know the answer to that question, I will love to tell you. But rest assured, I'm working hard, and there's something good that's going to come out of this.
Patents are filed.
Yep.
Trademarks are filed.
Yep.
And you're just trying to get it to work.
All that stuff. The road between idea and market for an independent inventor is not for the weak of heart.
All right. Well, maybe next time when you come on, you'll have something to show us. But I'm excited, as always, to see what you're building. And by the way, Scott did a great workshop for prototyping and thinking of how to build the next great thing in the kitchen, which we're actually going to publish on The Spoon as a separate little piece because we have that video. Scott, we appreciate you doing that.
Thanks for having me then and now.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that was it. I hope you enjoyed that. I know I enjoyed having Scott on the show. As always, you can find more Spoon podcasts at thespoon.tech or in your usual podcast spaces, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. So, all right, folks, we'll talk to you next week.